Well, everyone, welcome to RBCM at Home. My name is Kim Goff, and I'm a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum. I hope you're doing well and finding ways to take care of yourselves however you need to. I'm coming to you from my home on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people here in Esquimalt. Like many of you, staff of the Royal BC Museum and Archives have been asked to work from home, and in this series, we explore what that looks like. Today, we have two archivists who are going to discuss how they are involved in documenting our current pandemic. BC Archives' Genevieve Weber, and from the City of Coquitlam Archives, Emily Lonie. Welcome to you both. Genevieve, let's start with you and find out a little bit more about just what archivists are doing right now.
Thanks, Kim, and thank you everybody for joining us. And I want to especially thank Emily for coming along and joining us on this one. Emily and I have worked together a little bit in the past on a few different activities, and she works over in the City of Coquitlam, and I'm sure she'll tell you more about that. But I really admire the outreach that she does and the work that she's done in her community and to stay connected to other archivists. So thank you for all of that, Emily. I'm going to start just by talking a little bit about what archivists can do from home, because a lot of people think about archivists as working really hands-on with records, which is what we do a lot of the time. So part of the reason why people get into archives sometimes is because they enjoy working with old documents and doing research with them, and we get to work with some really fascinating things. And that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is processing records. So actually getting to hold physical items and read them and look at them and smell them, and all of the senses get involved. And it can be really incredible to look through something that was created 100 years ago and put some order into it and arrange it and make it so that other people can come in and access those records as well. But we can't do that right now because we're not allowed on site. So in my job at the BC Archives, we're being really cautious about not having people go on site unless it's absolutely necessary. So most of my colleagues who are archivists are working from home. We're all working from home. And we're having to find other ways of being in contact with the records and working with the records as well as our clients. And when I was talking to some of my colleagues before this, it was fun to hear them talk, because most people are just really excited that we're finally getting to jobs that we haven't been able to do for years because we usually don't have the time to. So the main way that people access the records in the BC Archives is through our database. We have a database, we use a database called Access to Memory, or ATOM. And the database is the first point of contact for people. They can do a search, they can look for records on a theme or a subject, or they can look by the creator, or they can use subject headings. And a big part of what archivists are doing right now is cleaning up the descriptions to make them more accessible so that people can find things more easily. They're adding new descriptions of records that have been kind of put on the back burner for a long time because we just haven't had time to get to them. So a lot of work is being done. Another a big project that's being worked on at the BC Archives, there was a big collection of sound recordings that were brought into our system from another system, and there was some strange glitches in the descriptions that when they were brought over, but there has never been time to go through and fix them because it takes a person to go through every single item level description and correct all of the spelling errors and mistakes. So that's all being fixed, which means that you'll get more results when you search on those records now. So it's been a lot of fun. It feels really satisfying, I think, for people to go through and fix mistakes and clean up things that have been messy and hard to use in the past. So that's a big part of what people are doing right now on my team. And another thing is doing extra research and writing. So something that I've been able to spend some time on is really doing a deep dive into some of the records collections that we have that we maybe don't know as much about, or we'd like to know more about, so we can use them for activities and other things. So that's been a lot of fun for me. And I'm doing some writing as well, which is nice too, to have time to actually sit down and work on writing.
It sounds like a good silver lining that, as you said, in the end is going to result in simpler access for people when they do go online to search, because we'll always be going online to search. It's not everyone can make it to the archives in person anyhow, but it's going to make it better for a lot of people in the future. Emily, are things similar for you?
Yeah, definitely. I hear a lot of similarities in what Genevieve is saying. So normally our work does involve a lot of direct interaction with the records in our care, but even from home, there's lots of work that we can do. So I thought I would give just a bit of an overview of what we've been doing at the City of Coquitlam. Very similar to what Genevieve was saying, our public reading room is closed. So, but we are continuing to answer reference requests through email and by phone. So that's helping researchers find the records they're looking for. And we're also answering a lot of staff requests because all the staff are trying to get their projects done during this time as well. So we're supporting those where we can with information from our holdings. And we're also doing a ton of work on our online search portal. So we actually use the same program as the BC Archives. There's a lot of familiarity with that program across BC. Lots of archives are starting to use it. So we're reviewing our descriptions and making sure they're all complete with no errors. And we're also doing a lot of work to add access points. So these are different ways that the public can search in our database. So you can, maybe you're looking for a specific person or a specific place. These are different ways that we can add these like metadata access points to our description. So one of my staff members has been doing a lot of work to improve that searchability in our system. And we're also converting a lot of our finding aids. So finding aids are we're typically like paper documents you got out of a box, and it would help you find kind of the lower level items in a collection. But we're actually trying to convert those into descriptions in our database so that our database will search those, so you'll get better results. And that's work, as Genevieve said, like we just would never have time to do this work normally. So this is a really great opportunity to improve the accessibility. The City of Coquitlam Archives does quarterly online exhibits. So normally, we're preparing exhibits for the remainder of 2020 during this time. This is something we can be writing from home. And I'm sure we'll probably end up preparing some for 2021 as well while all of this is going on. We're also doing a lot of work to catch up on archival theory, another thing that often gets left to, your home time.
So that's Emily, that's a new term for me. What do you mean by archival theory?
So just catching up on our professional journals and what people are writing about in the community, new theory, new ways of doing our work. And most of the professional journals in the archival community have actually provided free access to all of their recent issues. Usually there's an embargo of 3 to 4 years that are only accessible to members of the associations, but both the Association of Canadian Archivists and I believe the Society of American Archivists have made their professional journals accessible for free during this time. So we are taking advantage of that. My team has been having a weekly article club where we pick an article and then we discuss it. So we're improving our knowledge, but we're also, it's a great team building exercise and a way to connect with people remotely. And then just one final thing that's really specific to me, but I'm serving as chair of the program team for the annual conference of the Association of Canadian Archivists. So the pandemic has obviously forced us to cancel our in-person event, which would have been taking place in June. But we've actually decided to transition to a completely virtual event. And I've been working on getting all the speakers arranged with my team. And we're actually gonna have a 2.5-day virtual event that will be taking place June 10th to 12th through Zoom. So we're excited about that.
Right, it's new opportunities. I don't know if you were exploring making that conference online before, but this is sort of forcing us to do that, and in a way, hopefully increasing our outreach and getting more people involved. You're talking about looking at those professional journals and what other organizations are doing. What are you seeing other organizations do during this time to collect information about our current situation, what we're currently going through with lockdown?
Well, there's been so many interesting things. It's been really fascinating to see how people respond around the world. So this idea in archives of active or rapid response collecting is fairly new, as far as I understand. Generally, the theory, this is oversimplifying in a lot of ways, but generally in archives, we tend to collect things after the fact, because the idea is that you want to collect things that are created organically. They're created not because somebody is thinking, I'm going to write this down for future generations to read, but because they're doing it for some other reason. So records that are created are done for a specific purpose, and then later they might be used for a totally different purpose in the archives. But what a lot of people are doing now are actively seeking to make a record of what's happening in the world around them. And that's not to say that that's never happened in the past, but this is really unique because people are really are taking an active interest in it as the pandemic is happening, and wanting to capture what the experience is like in their communities. Before I get into sharing some of the examples that I've seen, I'm just looking down because I'm refreshing my memory on some of the names in a tweet that was shared with me. I wanted to point out that even the act of collecting during something like this is a real privilege, and it's not a privilege that everybody has. So there's a lot of communities around the world, and even right here in British Columbia, that during something like this, all of their energy and time has to be put towards caring for their community and their family. And something like collecting for an archives or a historical society or museum is not something that can be priority in this time. So particularly the tweet that was shared with me, it was by somebody named Steve Amadon, and he was speaking specifically to the US and about people of color and communities of color in the US. Here in Canada, we don't keep the same kind of data on racial differences with the pandemic, but there's certainly communities that are more isolated. Indigenous communities are often harder hit by these sorts of things. And I know from anecdotally from people that I am in contact with, that those are the communities where archivists and records managers tend to have to leave their work during a crisis like this to focus on their community's needs and their families' needs. So I wanted to make sure that that was mentioned, because it's a really important thing to keep in mind when we're doing this work, that it really is a privilege that we can be working from home and spending time and energy to think about the future and how people will be able to remember this. And it's something that I want to keep in mind as our institution goes forward. When we get responses to our call to share information, where are those responses coming from, and how can we make sure that we're accurately depicting the experience of the entire population of BC? I don't have the answers to that, but that's something that I'm sure that we'll all be keeping in mind as we go forward. So to start with, the Royal BC Museum has put out a call, like many museums and archives, and the BC Archives is part of the Royal BC Museum. We put out a call for people to share their thoughts on how we should be recording this time in our history. What sorts of things should we be collecting? So we're asking for people to share their thoughts on how we can best represent our community. And in addition to that call, which was put out recently, there's a number of other archives and institutions that have put out similar calls, and it seems like they're receiving similar types of responses. So although we don't have a public site yet where we can share what people have written into us, I can show you some similar ones that I think will be representative of the type of material that we can expect that we'll be getting here at the BC Archives. So I'll share a couple screens with you about that, and then I'll pass it over to Emily, who I know has some really interesting ones that she's found in her research. So, oh, now there's my share screen button. Sorry about that. So this is what the Royal BC Museum's call looks like. So this is on our website. You can find this if you go to our website. From the main page, just scroll down about halfway through and you'll see a link to this information. And it's talking a little bit about what we're interested in learning about. and how you can share those with us. And that may change, because we've discovered that in addition to lots of amazing ideas and thoughts and insights, people really are eager to share actual items and records. So we're looking at different ways where we can manage that. So watch this space if you're interested in sharing things with us. You can keep yourself updated by keeping an eye on our website to see how we do that going forward. But it's been really fascinating to see what people are sending in, and people's experiences from all around the province. So we, as the BC Archives, our mandate is to share or to collect records in the Royal BC Museum that are significant to the province as a whole. Other places, like this one, this is from a university in Ontario. So university archives, their mandate generally is to collect the records of their institution itself. And then they sometimes have a different collecting mandate around subject areas that maybe their university is specializes in. And I found this one really interesting, because you can submit objects and items or records, but you can also answer these 8 questions that they have come up with that prompt you to think about what your experience has been, and how you can how you're experiencing this, and how you'd like to have your experience remembered in the future. You can search on a map to see if people have included their coordinates. You can look on a map and see where these are coming from. So that's an interesting feature that I really like. And then you can look through the things that people have contributed. So as you go, I encourage people to scroll through and have a look through some of these on their own. This website has been really interesting. So there's a mixture of photographs, there's documents that people have uploaded that relate to the college, but also, and the university, but also the community beyond that. And then there's also audio-visual records, and I'm going to show you another one that I found really interesting as well. I apologize, I'm finding it hard with my, there's a tab that keeps coming down and blocking where I want to go. About that. Okay, this one, oh no, that's the UNESCO one. This one is another university. This one is from Texas. And they found that they had so many, in addition to, you can browse through the items that have been uploaded, which are similar, lots of photographs and people writing about their experience, and some sound items, but also they found that they had so many poems coming in that they created a collection just of all of the poetry that was coming in. And we found that in our experience here at the Royal BC Museum, we're getting a lot of examples of poetry and prose that people are writing, really beautiful accounts of their experience, moving accounts of their experience living through the pandemic and their family's experience. I found both of these sites really interesting because they're very similar to what I think we'll be finding is coming in from our call as well, and gives us an idea of what we can expect going forward. So I'll pass it over to Emily now.
Great. Yeah, so Genevieve and I were kind of back and forth about which ones we were going to share. There's so many interesting projects that are going on right now. Obviously, I'm sure everybody has heard, these are strange times, these are extraordinary times. But, sometimes it's really hard to comprehend the significance of something until long after it's passed. Obviously, we understand we're living through a major historic event right now, but we won't really know the true ramifications and how it's affected life and society until we have a bit of distance from it. So we know about the experiences of people during the Spanish flu epidemic because they kept records, and there were diaries that have survived that document their experiences. And these records were later donated to archives. So as Genevieve said, archivists tend to figure typically more in the last stage of a record's life, but more and more we're realizing that we do need to get involved to ensure some things are documented as they happen, mostly because of the extreme, like the speed at which things are produced, and all of the technology that is involved with producing all of these things, and the difficulties inherent in a lot of the preservation of that material. So over the past 6 or 7 weeks, I've really noticed like archives, historical societies, museums, and libraries from all over the world starting these COVID-19 collecting projects. And I was trying to keep track of all of them for a while, and that got a bit overwhelming. There are hundreds now underway, which is very exciting and will make for a very vivid archival record after the fact. But I wanted to show my 3 favorite projects so far, which are not necessarily from archives, but they're doing the same kind of documentation. So let me just share my screen here. So the first one I wanted to share was the Stay Home Sounds project. So this is a smaller part of an initiative from the Cities in Memory project, which is a global collaborative sound project that encompasses field recording, sound art, and sound mapping. So they decided to actually create an offshoot project specifically related to the pandemic. So people are invited to make a recording wherever they are in the world, and then upload it to the site and include a story of how they're experiencing the pandemic. So you can actually listen to the sounds and read the stories that they've collected so far on the map. And I thought I would share just one example that I found really moving and actually quite chilling. So this is a public announcement from Nanjo City concerning coronavirus restrictions heard at Azama Beach, Okinawa Island, and this was recorded on April 6th.
Emily, I noticed in that a piece you opened, is it transcribed at all what the message is?
It is not, unfortunately. So I think it's giving instructions on social distancing and requirements at the beach, but just this idea of these messages being repeated over and over again in a public space, I found really chilling. I tend to read a lot of dystopian fiction, and it really made me, it chilled me, to say the least. But this is just a fascinating collection, and I would really encourage people to click on all the different sounds. There are chanting from Tibetan monks. There's a celebration of Nowruz from Tehran. It's just fascinating. So yeah,
and we have put that link in the chat window. People can copy it from there to follow the link to Stay Home Sounds, is the name of that site. And I'm loving at 7 o'clock at night, our neighborhood becomes a symphony, a cacophonous symphony of clangings and bangings. And that always makes me feel a little teary that people are out there making those noises for healthcare workers. I think it's really moving. But I also live on a busy street, and I notice I can hear nature a lot more. I can hear the frogs at night right now. And so there's these small little things to enjoy now and then.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. In my complex, we're hearing a lot of birds, which is really lovely in the city. The second example I wanted to share is called the Isolation Museum. And this is a project where essentially, being forced to stay home really changes our relationship to our space. And I don't know, I'm really finding that I moved into a new house fairly recently, and this has been a time where I've really been able to connect with this new space and figure out how I use my new space differently. So the Isolation Museum attempts to capture the changes by encouraging people to reflect on their spaces and to share their stories with each other. So I thought I would share one of the items. So there's a collection of items that you can browse through. People have taken photographs, they've uploaded stories to kind of give an indication of how they're interacting with their space. But I found one incredibly striking that was posted on April 17th. Let me just find it here. This one here. So we've also obviously been very fortunate in BC, but this is really hitting home that how much the pandemic is really affecting people differently depending on where they live. So this is a certificate from France that someone posted that permits you to go outside. And there's a bit of a story there for each item. So an interesting documentation project there. And the third project I wanted to share is by a theater company, essentially in the UK. And they have developed a week-by-week response to the pandemic through the eyes of teenagers who are experiencing it from home. And they use different prompts, and each week has a theme. And they have a series, they actually have a program of 75, I believe, teenagers working on their program, but they've also given all of the resources and all of the prompts to different organizations to use them themselves if they want. So they create these compilation videos based on the themes every week. And they're really entertaining and really eye-opening to see this pandemic through the eyes of some of the UK's young people. And there are also a bunch of schools that are taking part across the UK and in different parts of the world who have taken up this challenge to create their coronavirus time capsules every week. So you can see what's going on in Kenya and what teenagers are doing in Kenya. So I think this is a great project. And if you need a time waster, or you've got a lot of time on your hands, this is a great project to check out.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing those, Emily. So those are some examples of what's going on in different institutions and places around the world. But Emily, you mentioned you just moved into a new place and it's creating this sort of new relationship for you and your home. What are some things you're doing personally in your life during this pandemic to document your own experience?
Yeah, do you want to go first, Genevieve, or do you want me to?
I'm going to try and keep it brief because Emily's got, I think, some really interesting thoughts on this, but a couple things that we've been doing. So first of all, I have two children, one is 8 and one is 5. So of course they've gone from going to school every day. My 5-year-old was in preschool 3 days a week and my 8-year-old is in grade 3. So they are now at home doing their schooling at home. So one thing that my son sometimes has a hard time being motivated to do his writing. He loves math, but writing takes a bit more effort. So to encourage him, we started getting him to create zines, which he really likes because he likes origami and paper crafts. So this way he gets to make a little zine or a magazine. This one's actually mine, but he gets to make a little zine and then he can do his writing in it. They're not necessarily about the pandemic, but they're a little collection of things he created during the pandemic. Some of them do talk about being at home and homeschooling and his experiences. So those are something that I'm keeping as a little mini collection. But I'm also writing, I've often been on and off my whole life being a journaler, and I like keeping a journal. So I've started journals for my children. So luckily I had 2 journals at home, so I didn't have to go buy any. This one I really like. It's got it's a Nancy Drew cover, and it's got some little Nancy Drew pictures throughout the journal. As you write in it, there's pictures. But I started keeping these because I know my children will have memories of this. They're old enough to have memories, but I wanted them to have something that would prompt their understanding of this time in their life. So they're each one is specific to I write about their experience. So I'm observing what they are experiencing in these journals. And I do find it really fascinating how they especially my 5-year-old, how he interprets what's happening in the world, and it becomes the new normal for him. And again, I want to reiterate how I feel so incredibly privileged that I'm living in a safe place, in a comfortable place, and I have the time to be able to do this, and I'm healthy and safe and able to do something like this. That having been said, it took me a few weeks before I started, because anxiety and unknowns were just weighing down on everyone, I think. So it did take me some time before I felt like I had the energy to put towards documenting it for my family.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same thing. I'm uncomfortable with history as it unfolds. I prefer, as an archivist, to be able to look back and analyze what has happened. So living through something like this gives me quite a bit of, it's quite unsettling, gives me quite a bit of anxiety. So I had to kind of calm down from that a little bit. But I would echo what Genevieve has said in terms of, I do feel incredibly privileged to still be able to be working and contributing and to be able to work from home and continue to do that. So at the Coquitlam Archives, we launched a program for our staff that was encouraging staff to keep a diary of some kind. Basically whatever that would look like for them. So writing in a paper journal, they could create a scrapbook with their children, they could write down their thoughts in a Word document or a Google Doc, or they could blog about their experiences. Really any way like a diary can take any kind of form. So once I had prepared all of that as a messaging to staff, I then thought I should probably take my own advice. So I started my own documentation project. So I write an archives themed blog on the side. And so I decided that I would try to capture my feelings about the pandemic and also keep a record of all of the interesting documentation projects I saw. This is when I was trying to document all of them, and I have now given up on that. But in my blog posts, I'm also keeping track of all of my favorite tweets and memes and videos that are really helping me to stay positive. I kind of call that section my self-care video of the day. And I also started keeping a daily journal. Like Genevieve, I had this one notebook in my house. Normally I would have agonized for hours at chapters on what notebook I was going to use for this purpose, but this was all I had. So necessity is the mother of invention there. I've been sort of documenting my feelings about the situation, how life has changed at home, and really just what's happening with friends and my family. And every once in a while, I kind of sprinkle in, some of the news if I can bring myself to actually check the news. I also started to collect public health posters. I just found these so fascinating, the way we communicate really important messages of public health to the community and how that message is disseminated. And so I decided, being an archivist, I put some limitations on my collecting, and I created a collecting mandate for myself. So I'm really focusing on posters from British Columbia and then nationally from the Canadian perspective. Although I have a bunch in the collection that I just like the look of, and some of them are from Alberta, some of them are from the US. But whatever I find striking, I'm storing in a Google Drive folder. Not sure what that will end up being, but it felt important to me. And then finally, I'm taking photographs to document this time in my life. So I have photos of Zoom sessions with friends and family. My book club has met via Zoom, and so I took a picture of all of us on the screen. I've got photos of signs posted in the neighborhood. I'm finding those fascinating, and just the changes and how all of the businesses in my local neighborhood are adapting to the situation. I've also been taking photos of beautiful flowers that are making me smile on my very short daily walks. And then I also have photos documenting my own workstation and my husband's work from home setups. This is just so different from what we're used to. So just capturing a bit of what the reality of life is for us. And I found that the documentation project has been incredibly cathartic. It's obviously an unsettling time, and I found it really helpful to write down my thoughts. I think that's probably the archivist in me, but somehow documenting and collecting makes all of this have some kind of meaning to me. And I think that makes me feel better about the whole thing. So that's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious if the people watching our attendees are collecting or documenting in some way. I think you have a little raise hand button on your chat window if you're watching us here live on Zoom. Do you want to just use that raise hand button if you are documenting or keeping a journal or taking pictures or doing something like that yourself?
Oh, there's a couple coming
There's
up.
a few hands. Yeah, well, maybe these examples will inspire you to think about that. As Emily was saying, it's cathartic and is a helpful processing time. I'm taking photographs. We have a dog, so when we walk the dog, if I'm seeing a nice sign or a hand-posted sign or things in the window, you know, the hearts and the art that people are putting up in their windows, I think is lovely. A friend. They had a photograph. I think there's someone in their community who's taking photographs of people standing outside of their houses. It's sort of you and your house, you know, if you are lucky enough to have a house and that privilege, as Genevieve mentioned, as a documentation. Well, I'm so thankful for both of you for coming today to share these examples of what's being done. I'm really happy to hear about the local examples and what we're doing. I invite everyone to check out those examples that we saw today, and in particular the Royal BC Museum project. So if you have something you want to share, you can please visit our website to look at that and to share what you think is significant and worth documenting at this time. RBCM at Home takes place every Tuesday and Thursday at noon. I hope you'll join us on Thursday for something completely different. We're going to be talking with the curator of invertebrate zoology about documenting marine biodiversity. So we'll go under the water for a half hour or so and experience what the variety that is down there. If you have young people in your lives, let them know about RBCM at Home Kids on Wednesdays at 11. These are sessions feature a museum educator and a staff person doing some hands-on activities to help you pass some time. And also on Wednesdays, we have RBCM Outside at 2 p.m. And links for all of these programs are posted on the museum's website. So while we wait for better days, I'm happy to have this way to stay connected with my colleagues and with my larger community. So thank you for joining us, and please take care of yourselves. Great.